were nothing like the Audi LMP1 car, but they were also a tenth of the price. So it was affordable racing for overall victories. And it was one of the few times that I won races overall, because I was normally in a GT class for Porsche in a 911.
Yeah. I want to ask you, we don't have time to go through the entire evolution of the 911 in GT racing over the course of your long career, but I thought maybe we could point out a couple of key developments in the 911s over that course of time that you think we should highlight, that people should know about. And when you started, I think you still had a clutch pedal, didn't you?
Yeah, so I started in a 996 GT3 Cup, obviously synchro H pattern with clutch, used it all the time. I may or may not have lifted the throttle on the upshifts, but I did dip the clutch. I think I bought 16 new gearboxes that year, but luckily my team was based in Weissach, so there were plenty of resources. They would just take one gearbox out, put another one in. They weren't even going to fix the synchros in that thing, but that's what you had to do. It was so tight. It was so close in a Super Cup, you know, opening act for Formula One and DTM. And so 996 GT3 Cup, to the end of that first season, 996 GT3R and RS. And then 2004, basically I did a couple races in an R and RS, and then right into a 996, the Evolution, which was the 996, these are a lot of acronyms, GT3 RSR, with a front flare. And right then, we were still synchro box H pattern, and we were transitioning to the first generation sequential box in any Porsche model line ever, at least on the customer side. Then, a few years in the 996, introductions to Flying Lizard, Alex Joe, Peterson, TRG. The 997 came, and I spent a couple years in between the two generations of 996 and 997 with a team called Penske Motorsport, Penske Racing, let's get that right.
We'll get to that in a second.
But I ended my career at the end of 21 in the last iteration 991 GT3R. So I saw the whole model line of 996, 997, and 991 and concluded at the end of 991. I've since driven the 992 GT3Rs, but yeah, going from non-ABS sequential synchro gearbox to sequential to paddle shifting, aerodynamics, weight, factory teams, customer teams. I mean, I probably raced 300-400 different races in GT racing in that time.
Did the cars get easier to drive in your mind, or were they harder to drive as you had more technology, more air, more downforce, and so on?
The limit and the window of performance just got narrower and narrower, but they were great. I mean, I look back with such fond memories of the era of my GT career because it was still old school.
Yeah.
Now I'm a crusty old washed up racing driver who says, oh, they're too digital, they're too automated, they're too easy. Just like Hurley says, well, when we raced, we didn't have cool shirts or AC, we only had 2 drivers. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys were driving at like 60% of the capability of the car, so you were out there just cruising around. And he's like, no, I wasn't. Yeah, we have fun, but no, it was a great era. I look back with great memories.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you know, all these famous teams that you drove for. My question there is, did the teams operate similarly to each other, or did you find, you know, significant differences, say, from one team to the next as you went?
It always varied. It varied based on the size of the team, the leadership and management, the budget, and how involved Porsche was. So 2004, when I went to Peterson, Porsche Motorsport was probably 5 human beings. Today, it's probably 200. Roland Kuzma came in to Le Mans because it was close to Stuttgart, and he engineered our car. He's the guest engineer. 2007, Norbert Singer was our guest engineer. So I was racing with Porsche Motorsport royalty, and that affected the culture because it kind of evened out all the different people from different walks of life. But for the most part, my GT teams were a lot of flying guys, a lot of rock stars from a certain market. Like this area brought a lot of drivers, but also a lot of techs, engineers, strategists. Joey Seeley was a tech on my Peterson team. Obviously, Greg I worked with at Alex Job through the years, and yeah, it's always interesting how these teams are built up. I mean, we've talked a lot about Bruce Levin this week and how he built his team in his heyday, so it's cool.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But maybe the ultimate team in racing.
Yeah.
I mean, the team that has the reputation for setting the absolute standard of professionalism and everything else. And I was surprised to learn just how involved Roger Penske himself was. Before we talk about the car, just talk a little bit about the team, the captain, and he was actually with you on the radio, right?
Yeah. In the late 80s, I would wake up early on Memorial Day, Sunday, and watch Gasoline Alley scenes from ABC Sports and Paul Page, as many of you did. And Roger Penske was the icon. I mean, he was the man. He was the guy that I was like, that's Danny Sullivan, that's Emerson Fittipaldi, Alan Jr. I mean, just seeing Penske in the 90s in Champ Car, or in kart, like everything, the trucks were brilliantly shiny. The wishbones on the damn race car were chrome. I mean, it was the measure of excellence. And obviously I learned when I was living in Germany about Mark Donohue and Penske and Porsche in the 917 days, 917-30 specifically, the Sunoco 917. And when the press release came out that Porsche and Penske were back together and they were building a brand new race car and they were going prototype racing, I thought, that's pretty cool. But there I am in my second year as a factory driver. That was like untouchable territory. And I was in Las Vegas in a parking structure and my phone rang in the off season of 05. We had just won the GT championship, Jurg and I, against Timo Ramal. And the phone rang and it was Bob Carlson and he said, you're gonna go to Sebring. You're gonna go to Sebring because you're gonna drive for Penske next year as the long distance driver in the RS Spider. And I was thinking to myself, that's kind of surreal. It didn't really hit me. It was kind of like, I don't know what that means. Like, maybe, whatever. I better get my neck in shape because it's gonna be a hard car to drive. But I was halfway nervous, halfway excited. Confidence was medium. And it just was a family. It was a family of human beings that were led by a guy who was detail-oriented. He was a racer through and through. He was intense, honest, and he took care of his people. He knew everybody's name on the team. He took care of his drivers, although if you effed up, you heard it, but never from him. You heard it from, most of the time, you heard it from his GM. He had always a good team around him, but he would also ask me questions directly, like, why the hell, like over the radio, why didn't you pit? I said, well, you told me never to pit unless you tell me to pit, so I didn't hear it on the radio, I didn't pit. So we would lock horns at times. I was young and dumb enough to talk back to Roger Penske. But we were racers and we were shoulder to shoulder.
I love the events. I particularly love the one with Patrick Long. It's the person himself and all the personal experiences that I'm finding that I truly enjoy about this.
Thanks, bud.
Really excited about it. That was so fun. I can't thank you enough for spending that time with us.
Sure.
Super cool. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I haven't seen that one before. That's cool.
I'm a 944 guy.
Nice.
So.
We just built the new Hot Wheels. It's an 87 turbo.
Oh, really?
It's called the Dirtmeister. It's an off-road shooting brake.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah, you'll see it. They're going to do, I think they're doing it in the main line.
thanks. Or worse. Look at the lap time and ask the driver, was it better or worse? Because sometimes they don't know if it's front or rear or oversteer or understeer. They might be too early in racing and just better or worse. That's a lot of times how we tune race cars when there was a very little amount of time and the engineer was just making one damper click at a time.
Okay.
So it's hard to feel dampers. Easy to feel shocks and bars, hard to feel dampers.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, good to talk to you. What are you doing with the V8?
Well, I was originally planning, so I got the whole car. It's a completely trashed 86 928, and I have an 84, so it's the single overhead cam, and the 86 is the dual overhead cam 500. So I was going to build it to put in my 84 928.
Cool. Well, if you end up with either one of the engines, it's a personal project of mine, and what I want to do is actually run it carbureted and kind of strip it down, keep the valve covers, but get it really lean down. And I want to make a hot rod engine.
Yeah, that's I was told by the people who worked at Greg's shop when we were cleaning it out that car was originally for you to build some sort of hot rod, and then that just never happened.
Yeah.
So it sat there, no title. It was a white on red, or white with dark red interior, 86 928.
Well, hit me up on social media. Let me know which way you end up going, and if you have an extra engine, yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Maybe have you guys build it.